Why does the UK need overseas investors? Today, I'm joined by Marc von Grundherr, who is a director at Benham and Reeves. Marc, why does the UK need overseas investors?
Overseas investors, we're talking about overseas investors into the property market. And why do we need them? Because number one, they're looking at long-term return. So they're able to afford to put down the deposit now from a developer 2 to 3 years before completion. UK homeowners, they need to move within 6 months. So therefore, you need overseas investors coming in, putting oil on the wheels to allow developers to get building. Placemaking, that's a huge topic across the UK, but primarily in London, where you've seen these massive placemaking schemes. If you didn't have overseas investors at the beginning, 2-3 years before they actually get the building out of the ground.
When you say placemaking, it's just like
Battersea Power Station or Nine Elms. The whole of Nine Elms is a massive regeneration
Because
scheme.
I read at the weekend that they pumped in loads of money into the tube extension.
Yep.
Like nearly £250 million.
Yeah, I heard that, £500 million I heard. But I mean, you look at other places where you look at places like Woolwich, where Woolwich, you've got the new Crossrail station come, the Elizabeth line. They've pumped in, you know, hundreds of millions of pounds into the local area. And what I'm saying about overseas investors, because they're there at the beginning and they look to the long term, they're investing at the beginning, which UK homeowners won't do. UK investors now into the property market are very, very few and far between.
I mean, you do have a focus very much on London, and you know, the London is almost a different world compared to the rest of us country bumpkins. And what is the attraction of London? You know, and what other cities can people invest in that, if we do overtax these people?
I think, you know, London has advantages because they all know it. You know, many of them come and visit and they stick in London if they're here for a few days, as opposed to going to other cities. But people have done very well in Manchester. It's an international airport. Many Chinese students have been studying there, and other nationalities, to be fair. But there have been lots of Chinese buy in Manchester because it's done very well. Capital values have gone up. Birmingham has also gone through the roof. I read the other day, Durham's in the top 5 of places people have been investing. And so these kind of secondary cities, London is where we're based, but other cities have done very well indeed. But I compare Manchester now with London, and some of the latest schemes, you're paying £400,000 for a 1-bedroom flat. Why would you spend that in Manchester when you can spend almost the same money in London? You'd rather be in the capital, surely. So if the values are much lower, like in, you know, secondary cities, which they should be, then it's worth looking at. I think when the capital values have gone up to where they are now, I just think they don't make sense.
What's their motivation of buying in London then?
So it's London and the rest of the UK. What you tend to find is a lot of people that have been educated here, they have an affinity with the UK, and so they buy for investment. So if they went to London University, they go back to Singapore or Hong Kong or China, and then when they earn a good amount of money and they want to invest, they invest in the UK. So actually what we're seeing now is then their children or people's children who come to study here, they go to Imperial, King's, Oxford, Cambridge, Manchester University, they will buy. So we find 68% of our clients who buy from offshore, overseas, will tend to buy for their children to live in.
So actually, making sure that overseas students come to universities is a fantastic way to bring investment into
100%.
UK PLC.
100%. I mean, Donald Trump when he was elected last time, and he said, we don't want Chinese in the UK, in the US, and he put China off. All that did is turn the Chinese student focus onto the UK. They were already going to Australia, but many of them started focusing on the UK. And the thing that you have to remember, we need friends globally now. The UK needs friends to trade with and to grow relationships. If someone did their degree here or their undergraduate degree here, and then they go back, they'll have an affinity with the UK. And that affinity is very strong for trade, for business, and for further investment.
We mentioned taxation at the start. I mean, let's be honest, there's extra stamp duty and extra costs. Is it fair?
You know, my view, I've been in this business now over 25 years. When I first started, overseas investors paid no capital gains tax, no inheritance tax, and very little income tax because they only paid above the certain amount of offsetting mortgage interest rate. I thought that was grossly unfair. Great for the industry, but actually not fair. Why would a British person pay more tax than someone coming from Hong Kong? They even the field, so they pay capital gains like we do, they pay income tax like we do, and they now pay inheritance tax like we do. So actually, that's much fairer. Is it fair to have an additional small tax for overseas people to buy here? That doesn't put me off so much because it's 3%, so it's not the end of the world. It's not really fair, but then you look at places like Singapore, where it's 40% for a foreigner, or China, where I can't even buy, or Saudi Arabia, I can't even buy. That's not fair either. I think 3% stamp duty is not terrible.
It's not going to put people
It's not
off.
going to really put people off for the long term. It's not great, but actually it doesn't really put people off long term. If I was there with my property hat on and a politician, I would get rid of it, of course, because it discourages a few. But it's not a big put off. Actually, stamp duty is a pretty big put off because stamp duty is obviously now tiered, which is very fair. But actually, it's a London tax because ultimately the majority of it is paid in London. So you asked earlier about buying in other places. You're better off as an investor buying in Manchester because your capital value will be lower, so your stamp duty will be lower. Buy 4 in Manchester rather than 1 in London. That does happen.
And the yield will be probably...
And the yield will be slightly higher.
So do you think, as long as property values remain quite stable, and I think silly happens, is that the satellite cities like your Birminghams, your Nottinghams, your Sheffields, your Leeds will actually start to not catch up, but
I think they will continue to thrive. But the thing is, you have to think is, where is the rental market? Is it going to be local rent? The thing about London that makes London stand alone is the fact that it has huge number of overseas people who rent. So that's whether they're coming to work for Disney, Coca-Cola, L'Oreal, international companies when they come and work for them in London. International students, when they come and they live in London, they're lucky if they get halls the first year. Then they have to rent in the private market the rest of the time. That is a huge market of people that are looking to rent. And we're actually, as you say, we're in July and the market is already off the hook. I've already got people rented for October for the new student year. But what I'm saying is, outside London, you're looking primarily, except a little bit in Manchester, a little bit in Birmingham, primarily at the local market. So if wages are under pressure, if interest rates are very high, these are going to be have a huge effect on the local rental market. In London, it doesn't affect whether interest rates are high and cost of living is high, because those people are here for a short period of time. You know, we have a Japan team that work with Japanese companies bringing their people to the UK. 90% of those jobs are in London, and those people stay on average just under 4 years, and the rental is the rental market. It isn't affected by any of the outside pressures.
So in essence, what you're really saying is overseas investors are not the issue. What do you think is the issue with the property market?
I think the big issue is the 100,000 a year homes we're not building in the UK. And this is what the government should be focusing their efforts on, not taxing and vilifying overseas investors and taking profits and making money in the UK. The focus should be on building more homes.
100% agree with you. Thank you for your time today, Marc.
Thank you.